Okay, it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. John Lott, founder of the Crime Prevention and Research Center. Welcome, Dr. Lott.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we were getting you in between the Supreme Court hearings. I understand that. I wonder, I mean, you've been prolific in writing articles. Bloomberg thinks that you're the main cause of school shootings in America. You seem to be their number one person that they dislike. But tell us, what is the truth about crime and guns? What do you want our audience to know?
Well, I mean, if you want to stop crime, it's the same thing whether you want to start crime generally or crime with guns. You have to make it risky for criminals to go and commit crimes. Higher arrest rates, higher conviction rates, longer prison sentences. But you can also make it risky for criminals to commit crime by making it so that victims are able to defend themselves. Unfortunately, that simple point seems to be lost on lots of people there. But it's not rocket science. What we're talking about in the last few years, you've had district attorneys around the country who are refusing to prosecute violent criminals. You've had large cuts in police budgets. Chicago in 2020 alone cut the number of police officers by 400 positions. You had New York City cut its police budget by $1 billion a year. You've had liberal judges in many parts of the country releasing half or even 2/3 of the inmates from local jails. And that's even though you were talking about young people there. These are not 65, 70-year-old people that they're primarily releasing from these. Overwhelmingly, the population of jails are like 18 to early 30s. Surely even by the end of 2020, let alone 2022, when you're still having some of these releases occurring, people understood that those weren't the ones at risk from having COVID. But, or you've had bail reform in many places where you go and you release people on no bail or very little bail. There's a case just a couple months ago in Detroit where a man had killed 3 people. He was released on about $1,000 in bail, and he killed somebody else. So he's already facing 3 life sentences. What's the additional penalty you impose on him? You're going to take away his 4th life if he goes and kills another person that's there? It's just there's no real penalty that he faces because there's no 4th life to take away from him. So guess what? He gets a free murder essentially at that point. And so, you think this would be easy stuff for people to understand, but apparently not.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's incredibly frustrating. I wanted to ask you about the situation in Lewiston, Maine. I mean, my impression of Maine is that there are a lot of gun owners in Maine, and you would think that if a shooter goes into a bar and starts shooting, that there would be a few people in the bar who would be shooting back. But can you tell us what happened in Maine, if you know?
Well, I'm still trying to figure stuff out, but one thing that's clear is it looks like pretty clearly that the bowling alley where he first engaged in the attack was a place that had posted a sign banning people being able to go and carry concealed handguns in there. In Maine, disobeying the sign there is a criminal offense. You can go to jail, just like in Nashville at the Covenant School shooting there. It was a crime to take a gun into a gun-free zone that's there. And, the problem is, let's take something like the school shooting. It's just up to 6 years in prison for violating the Gun-Free School Zone Act that's there. 6 years. That's a big penalty for you or I. Our lives would be dramatically changed if we had to be in jail for 6 years. But in this case, the murderer killed 6 people. Let's say they were facing 6, had lived and were facing 6 life sentences or 6 death penalties. Would an additional 6 years make a difference? It's like, okay, so they have 6 life sentences, but, and they can live with that, but you put another 6 years on it to try to take something away from their seventh life there, that would just be too much of a penalty for them. All the law ends up doing is making it so that the law-abiding good citizens are the ones who face real penalties and will obey the law. The criminal doesn't face any marginal penalty, and so they're more likely to disobey, and it actually makes it safer for them to go and do their attack.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense, and I don't understand why. Well, I guess I do know why. Some people don't want to deal with reality, I guess. But let me ask you about this. What about the situation in Israel? I was in Israel a few years ago. You walk down the street, you see young men and women, soldiers who are carrying what look like to me AR-15s or some type of weapon. But the residents of South Israel, they didn't seem to be prepared. They were not armed. What happened there?
Right. Well, gun control laws have changed a lot over time in Israel. Up until about 1972, obviously, you've had terrorist attacks in Israel from even before they became a country. But up until 1972, civilians were banned from being able to go and carry guns. After 1972, they were allowed, and you had in many years maybe up to 14% of the adult Jewish population legally licensed to carry. But in recent years, the gun control debate in Israel has kind of resembled the gun control debate here in the United States, where a lot of politicians on the left and even the middle were concerned about allowing civilians to have guns. And they've been much more restrictive. They've reduced it down to about 3% of adult Jews being licensed to have a gun. And, they changed that on October 8th, right after the attack. You've had well over 100,000 applications for people being able to go and carry, but which would almost double what they had allowed. But, I'm sure they kind of wish that they had changed that a week earlier or a month earlier before the attack occurred. You can just imagine something like the attack at the music festival, how that might have turned out differently, if only to allow people the opportunity to escape, if they had, in fact, had it so that some of the people there had guns to be able to go and protect themselves. There was one kibbutz where the security officer there kind of violated the law and started handing out guns to people that was there, and they effectively stopped the attack. Again, you just kind of wish that was true in other places. Netanyahu had been pushing for relaxation of the strict gun control laws that they had there, but even even in his government, it was he had opposition to doing that.
Well,
but now that's changed.
Yeah. A little bit late, but okay. Well, let me show people your incredible website. This is crimeresearch.org. You've got articles in the Federalist. You have articles in Washington Times. Feds want SCOTUS to let judges strip gun rights even when there's been no crime. You have a column on SCOTUS rules on ghost gun regulation. Town hall, why not enforce existing laws rather than push for new gun control? In Wall Street Journal, how to handle domestic violence and gun rights. And there's a lot of research here. And I mean, it's amazing how much the Crime Prevention Research Center is able to get out this information. And I do recommend that everyone go and check it out. In addition, Dr. Lott has a number of books. Most famous one, I guess, is More Guns, Less Crime, and The Bias Against Guns, I think, is your most recent book. I don't know if that's true, but
Gun Control Myths is my most recent one.
Yeah.
But The Bias Against Guns, that's been out for a long time, but I appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for coming on the show. We really appreciate everything that you do. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Take care.
Take care.